No tree that we use for bonsai wanted to be a bonsai. So the best way to introduce taper into a tree, they are exceptions. They are exceptions.
So why is exceptions?
They are exceptions. Once that's tall enough, thick enough, we can cut it off. So in this case, I'm looking at movement here, and I'm looking for change of direction through that. So this comes off. The idea of a sacrifice branch is we are using what the tree naturally wanted to do and utilize that to our advantage. What I mean is, if you look at this tree, it's a Kokipa Chinese elm. If it's allowed to let grow on its own, you'll see big long branches like this. And that's without any help. That's how the tree is meant to be doing. No tree that we use for bonsai wanted to be a bonsai. None of them. They are genetically engineered to be a big tall tree. So when we want to shrink them down, that tendency to grow big doesn't change. Okay, so often what we do is we keep on cutting it back, keep on cutting it back, keep on cutting it back. But from that, we can maintain a tree at a very small size. But often, as a result of that, the tree don't thicken much because we trim it back, we can control it without restricting its growth. So a sacrifice branch is we pick branches that has grown in certain part of the tree to allow it to run. So if you look at this Chinese elm, this branch is so tall. Where it's growing, when that's running, that will thicken all the parts below that. If you can imagine, if this branch is up here, that will thicken the whole length. Now, do we want it to thicken the whole length? Not necessarily, because in bonsai we want to have taper. Now, taper is the idea that it's thicker here. You can see it's thicker, quite thick here. As it moves and travels up the trunk, it becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. So if you allow something to grow up the top, you thicken a whole lot. That will give you the thickness, but no taper. So the best way to introduce taper into a tree, ideally it would be to have a branch down low that's growing, and that will thicken the lower part. So while that's growing, you can work on the rest of the tree. You can work on the rest of the tree while that's thickening the base. Okay, that'll be the ideal situation. Now, it's not always ideal because trees, again, they don't want to be bonsais. So often you have branches up here that will take over. And when that happens, again, everything down low will lose its strength. So often we'll then have a designated branch down here to grow, which is what we have here. So as this is growing, that will thicken the base, and we can continue to trim and cut the trees back. Okay, so we can do that to refine and work on the branches. All right, so this tree, luckily we have something down here, but often they are up the top. But let's say we are working on trees that only have good growth at the top. The way to introduce taper will be to make cuts. Because you can see this tree, nice movement here, we wire all that up to about here. That's where the wire ends, that's where the training stops. So from here to there, you can see as far as the trunk is concerned, there's not much taper in that. If we want to grow a much bigger tree, then it's not a big issue. But if we want to have a shorter tree, which is what we do here, the tree needs to be cut. Okay, so that's when you don't have something down there to thicken, you cut to introduce taper. So in this case, I'm looking at movement here, and I'm looking for change of direction through that. So this comes off. So you can see immediately I've shortened the length and giving the tree taper into that. Okay, so that's another way of how we need to make those cuts to let the tree to have the illusion of taper, because taper is important. I would say taper is the most important in growing bonsai, because we can wire something, but if it's taperless, it still looks really contrived and artificial. But if you can get taper into it, it's because taper is the best representation of age in nature. Trees in nature, they have time to grow, 10 years, decades, hundreds of years. So the base can become thicker. but we don't have that luxury here, so we need to introduce it through our pruning. So even that branch, I think you can tell, that branch is pretty big, pretty thick. So that in this case is coming off. So any growth up the top that's thick, overgrown, we remove them. We replace them with smaller branches like this, And in time, those smaller branches, they'll grow big. So that's why we need to control them. All right, so that's why having this in place, growing thick, we don't need to worry about it, just let it run. Well, we can maintain the whole tree. So by next year, I would say if it's growing well, the trunk will thicken probably another 20 to 30%, while the tree would have ramified further. Okay, so that would be the best way to set up your sacrifice branches somewhere down low.
And obviously it leaves a bit of a scar.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can control that?
Okay. Good question, because you can see how big that is right there. It's as thick as the trunk. All right, so if I cut it off right now, that will leave a scar as big as the trunk. If you don't mind, just bring it there. There was a big branch cut off there already. Okay, and you can see there's a scar there, and that was cut off probably last year or the year before. Unfortunately, to the bonsai, there will be a scar. Unfortunately, that will be the case. Just whether it's a big scar or a small scar. Now, this being a corky bark elm, which means given enough time, the bark will become so corked up, that would disappear. And also because that's quite low, you can see that's another beauty of having the sacrifice branch down low, is as that big cut is there, but as we develop the tree for the next 5, 10, 20 years, all the traffic flow, all the sap flow through the trunk had to go past that point. Therefore, that will callus over very quickly. If you have a big scar up there and your tree is only that small, that will take a long time to heal. So this is why if they say next year we cut that off, I have no concern about the scar, because this tree is only early. This tree only you're probably looking at a 4 to 5 year old tree. Okay, so once I cut that off, the tree has the next few decades to heal the scar. And because it's set up down low, that will heal in no time. So that's only have 1 year to callus over. But sacrifice branch is definitely one of the ways that we need to utilize using what a tree is doing to help us grow the thickness into the tree. But the taper itself comes from our pruning.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you go about selecting a branch to use as a sacrificial branch?
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's look at this black pine, for example. Okay, this is a little black pine that we've grown from seed. I would say the tree is roughly 4 years old now. You can tell the tree has many branches. If you can tell, the tree has easily 15 branches on the tree. And the same principle is we selected this branch right down low at the back of the tree. All right, so you can see the tree has 1 year growth, 2, 3. So 3-year-old branch, and it's set up right down there. So what we do is we'll prune the tree back, everything back on the tree, but this branch will leave it untouched. We leave it untouched so that you can gain strength, gain strength, gain strength. Now you can see that branch is taller than the tree itself, and this would now just take over, and then you would thicken our base while we develop and prune the tree back and wire the rest of the tree. So we can achieve a nice tree quicker than other people, because we have set that up while we wire the tree. That takes time though, because often low branches are the weakest. Okay, so it takes 1, 2, 3 years until we have sort of nurtured it so that it's higher than the tree itself now it's good to go. So now we can then wire and start to shape and maintain the tree. So by the time we're finished, this tree will be this small with 10 to 15 branches, still intact, still small, but with thicker trunk. Okay, so that's sort of how we utilize them. So we need to be very smart in how we place them. So definitely down low will be better. There are exceptions. There are exceptions.
So always exceptions.
There are exceptions. Okay. This is a blue cedar, like the ones we did last time. What we used to do is, knowing all that, we need to set up a sacrifice branch. But with blue cedars, they are very top dominant. It's very difficult for the lower branches to come out, to grow. Because really, again, like I said, this tree does not care about being a little tree. It has the aspiration to be a big tall tree, 20 meters tall. Doesn't care about any low branches. So what we used to do is, okay, we'll cut that off. We'll cut a whole branch off and then wire a new branch up, because we need to cut it off, introduce a new apex into it, new trunk. But as that's been removed, this now becomes the tallest part of the tree. So in the next year, this will grow exponentially, so much so that the wire that we wired up with will bite in, and that would ruin that new apex that we picked up. Then next year we'll come, oh, that's ruined. So we cut it off, we pick up another new apex. And then if we're not careful, that cuts in again, because the apex grows too quick. So this year what we're doing is, instead of cutting that top branch off, we're leaving it there. Okay, because the dilemma that we have is, okay, we're cutting it back, new apex, cutting it back, new apex, but the trunk never thickens, because it's just thickened very, very slowly, because we never let it run. It's not ideal. So this year what we're going to do is, we are cutting it back in such a way, so the top, this is the sacrifice branch still. So this will continue to grow another year or two while we monitor the growth here. Being a cedar, unlike the black pine, while that's growing, it weakens everything. Cedars don't do that. So these guys can stay alive for many, many years to come while that's growing. So we're going to use the tree's tendency to not kill the bottom branches that quickly to our advantage. So this year we're going to let that run up the top while we wire the branch up. So this year I have no worry, I have no concern about this biting in and leaving a white scar on the branch, because of that still running. So this won't take off that quickly. So hopefully in 12 months time, we can take it off, and then we can begin to build a tree. And by that time we would be able to cut that off and then start to build a tree. So this is something new that we're going to try, leaving the top running, but I think it should work. Okay, so this is an exception where we can't have any low branches on the tree to grow, so we make exceptions for this. Many people look at that and say, that's it, I'm going to grow a tree that big. In 10 years time, it's going to be like that, but thicker. No. Often in this case, while we have that, the top will begin to run. While that's running, that thickens the whole lot. And as that's thickening the whole lot, it weakens all the other branches below it. All right, so that's why I said earlier, often we would like to have a bottom branch. Perhaps, hopefully, there's a branch down there. Right now, it's the weakest. So this year, we cut everything back. It's come out, we cut everything back. So it grow a little bit. So now we're talking about black pine now. Next year, everything's being cut back. It grow another bit. So we'll cut it back again, third year. So often, to nurture a lower branch to be taller than the tree itself takes 2 to 3 years. All right, while that's running, that will thicken, and that will thicken the base. That'll give us thickening at the base, while we can then work on the secondary, tertiary branches on the tree. Okay, and then once that's tall enough, thick enough, we can cut it off. We can either cut it off with a scar, but again, in the lowest part, that will heal very quickly. Or what we can do often, then we can turn that deadwood into some sort of interesting piece of deadwood, into a gene on the tree. We can turn it into that too. So we are not wasting anything. So the sacrifice branch gives us that thickening at the base, while the whole thing is like that. If we do it the other way, letting the top run, okay, let it run, and that thickens the whole lot. That would thicken the whole lot for us. But in that time, a lot of this branch would have died. It would have died. So you end up with a tree that has movement that which we wired in, but you might end up with a branch left there. So in terms of growing a smaller bonsai, having the top running is just not the right way to go. On trees that doesn't backbud. Okay, so but if this is a Chinese elm, we can do that. Chinese elm, we can cut that off. New buds begin to pop up everywhere. In a trident maple, it can pop up everywhere. But if you're growing a pine or anything that doesn't backbud that easily, a low sacrifice branch will be the way to go. You can see that that's got movement, but there's no taper. Everything is the same thickness. Okay, so in that case, we need to, we pick a new branch, cut it up, and grow again. While it's growing, thicken up a whole lot, cut it off, new branch, grow again. So if we're replacing the apex multiple times to get a taper into it. But if you can have a low sacrifice branch, that would speed that up process. Okay, so that's the idea behind how we build taper into the tree.